Welcome to Off-Road Travel TV.
We're here at the Beta Factory Race Shop in Paso Robles, California with AMA Hall of Famer Rodney Smith. Rodney's also an AMA Grand National Cross Country Champion, ISD gold medalist, and he's here to give us a lot of tech tips today.
In this episode, we're going to show you the do's and don'ts on how to wash your dirt bike. So the first steps about washing a dirt bike is preparation. One, you want to get the bike good up off the ground so you can spin both wheels freely to be able to wash the tires and the rims and spokes good. Then you want to prep the bike for the wash. You want to put a plug in the exhaust so you don't get no water inside the muffler going down inside the pipe or the motor. And you also want to put a filter cover over where the filter is so that you can wash out the air box good and clean before you put in a new filter. I prefer to use a pressure washer. I don't really like to use a real high-powered pressure washer, so to speak, but a good pressure washer. I like to wash all the mud and dirt that I can get off first. That being said, is because if you spray a bunch of chemicals onto the mud and stuff itself, you're not actually getting to the bike to clean the bike. So I like to get as much mud as I can off the bike first. Then I come back and spray the bike down with a chemical, with a bike wash, a good bike wash. There's a bunch of them out there nowadays. But the one thing I do like to want to point out is you don't want to leave the bike wash on the bike for very long. If you have a lot of good anodized parts, a good harsh bike wash can fade them. So once you spray down the bike and the tires and the complete bike with a wash, you want to make sure you hit it right away with the water. As we continue to get all the big part of the mud and stuff off the bike, another thing we want to do is lay it over on its side so that we can get all the corners and stuff that we can't reach when the bike's sitting on a stand. You want to make sure, for example, you get underneath the tank, you get the radiator hoses, you can get the bottom of the skid plate, the linkage. You can get what makes a clean bike better than another clean bike is when you can get all those little parts, places that other people forget or miss, and when you lay the bike on its side, you can get in those places better. So dirt bikes have two different types of chains. Typically the smaller displacements have a standard chain, and the higher displacements have a O-ring chain, which is more durable. If my bike has an O-ring chain, I don't mind hitting it with a pressure washer and cleaning it really good with the pressure washer and then hitting it with a lubrication after. If I have a standard chain on my bike, I'm going to make sure I want to use one of these brushes here so that I don't hit the chain as hard with the pressure washer and get water inside the chain. And then when I'm done washing it, after I clean it with the brush, I want to make sure I get a good chain oil on it to get back into to lubricate the chain. So after we've done rinsing the bike off and getting all the major parts of the mud and stuff off of it, now we've sprayed the soap, our bike wash, over a light spray over the whole part. Make sure you get the tires really good, you know, all the nooks and crannies. You want to get a light spray on the bike itself, and then we're gonna hit it with the pressure washer one more time to get all the soap and stuff off. One key important I talked about a little bit earlier was make sure that you get the soap off the bike relatively quick. You don't want to let it sit on your anodized parts. Now that we're done rinsing all the soap and stuff off the bike, we got it good and clean. Now is a step where we come with an MPP oil or a WD-40 type oil. I prefer Maxima. I spray a light coat of oil pretty much on the whole bike. I like to hit the spoke nipples so you can get oil down in the spoke nipples, like the foot pegs, the cables, and kind of get a light spray. You just don't want to hit your discs. So at this point, now that I've washed the bike, I got everything, soap and everything rinsed off, I've sprayed a light coat of oil over everything. I've made sure I've really gotten oil into the levers, the ignition parts. I've oiled the chain really good. All the moving parts, the linkages, get a little bit of that penetrating oil wherever you can in the levers. But also I like to do a light spray over most of the bike. Just don't want to get it on the disc brakes. I want to get the chain really good. Another key part is at that point I'm also spraying out the air box. Since there's no air filter and stuff in there right now, we still got the cover in there. It's a great time to go ahead and finish cleaning out the air box real good before we put a new air filter in it. Another thing, my next step is I would remove the plug from the exhaust pipe, take out the air box cover. As I'm finishing drying it with a towel, I like to start it and just let it idle for a few seconds. For that point, if there's any water at all that might have went inside the motor, the water does not hurt the motors, providing we get it started right away. Okay, our one last step of a happy clean bike is to hit it with the air hose. We've dried it, we've sprayed oil on it, we've wiped off most of the oil, we got the bike kind of nice and clean and shiny. The one last step with the air is we can get all the air out of the little nicks and crannies. So I want the fork, I use gas tank. Now that we're pretty much done with the bike wash and everything on the clean part of the bike, One of the key details we want to pay attention to is as we're finishing it up, drying it and stuff like that, we want to look at the next maintenance stuff that we have to do. Pay attention to the spokes as you're drying the wheel to make sure the spokes are good and tight. You know, take a quick glance at your chain and make sure the tension on it looks pretty close. It's just a good time then, as you're finishing up the bike, as you're washing it, to look over that next maintenance stuff that you need to take care of. Thanks for watching. I hope all these tips help.